Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. This is episode 173 with Chrissy Winslow. She and her family have met my family years ago in church, and they work globally. They're in a different country and have been for many years. And she is a health and wellness professional. She has a certificate from Harvard Medical School in sustainable nutrition coaching and coaching pillars of lifestyle medicine. We talk about the differences of health and wellness from being an American in America to being an American in a different country for an extended period of time. Not just your typical weeks-long vacation, but what can you expect? What are the challenges that you're going to come across? How can you continue to live a healthy and fulfilling and well life in another country for an extended period of time? It's great information. Chrissy is a wealth of knowledge, and she is there for other expats who are trying to transition and struggling. She shares her own story about food and nutrition struggles in how it became into this, how her journey became into helping other people with that transition point, with those issues that come up as you're in other countries, that you're the foreigner and you're still trying to be healthy. You're still trying to be well. You're still trying to live a good physical life for your own body, but still connecting in getting involved in the community that you're in. So wealth of knowledge when it comes to those areas. I think it's also very helpful for anybody else that if you're not living in another country, just to also, how do you get in your community and how do you connect and how do you still use the gifts that God's given you to be able to connect with people around you and become healthier and and live a well life long into many more decades than where you're at now. So thank you, Chrissy, for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Oh, great. I'm excited about talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we met years ago through church, but you spend more time outside of the country. But you've recently, I don't know that it was necessarily like what you grew up thinking you were going to do, but recently you've gotten into more of a helping people with their health and their fitness, and especially expatriates as they're outside of the country in their, whatever part of the world they're in. Tell us a little bit about how that came about, as far as like, oh my gosh, okay, there's some differences between when you're outside of the country for a long time, how you need to approach your health in different cultures.
Well, I guess it's my interest in exercise and fitness and trying different healthy recipes started when I was a very little girl. Yeah. My mother actually has these really funny pictures of me running around in a rainbow bright bathing suit with 1980 style sweatbands like on my head and right on my wrist.
Yeah.
I would say I was going to go and exercise, and that if anybody wanted to come, I would teach them too. I actually did not plan on that as what you might call a career, as my work that I'm doing now. I just suppose that if you wanted to do something like that, you had to love competitive team sports. And I love fitness. I love wellness. I love nutrition. I love talking about the pillars of a healthy lifestyle, but I do not have a competitive bone in my body. I am a type B personality completely. I will work hard in the gym or out on the track or training with a client, but I am just not competitive. So I grew up thinking, unless I want to be a sports coach or something like that, or a professional athlete, then I can't have any work in health and fitness. So it wasn't until my family, well, my husband and I, in our late 20s, we moved to South Asia. And I just learned through my 7 years there, health and wellness is important, and it's quite different and quite complicated in this context, because this isn't my home culture. This isn't my home country. Yeah. The medical care is different. Food is different. The opportunities to exercise in a gym versus outside, also including what's appropriate for the culture. Yeah. That's just very different than what I grew up knowing in my home culture. And so trial and error through 7 years of learning how to take care of myself and my family and how to encourage other people in their health and wellness journeys, I just slowly started discovering, hey, this is important to me. It's important to my family. And I love doing this.
Right.
I love doing it. I love helping other people with it. And so just my journey toward personal training and health and wellness coaching and nutrition, healthy lifestyle coaching for expats, that was born out of some really rough experiences, personal experience for me and for my family. And just, I'm thankful for the opportunity to take what's important to me and my passion and the thing I continue learning to love about, and just be able to help expats on their individual journeys, because they're all just so unique, because every country and culture is unique. So that affects health and wellness in different ways.
Yeah, totally. And I would imagine it starts with like the food the differences, right? Like, because I mean, just beside the fact that things might not be as sanitary in some countries as they are here in the US, as far as, eating out and what the health department says is supposed to happen here versus like what may happen elsewhere.
Yes. And that was really, for me, if I can use a Texas saying, that was a hard road
right.
for me, when, at least I think that's a Texas saying. I grew up in Kentucky, so perhaps it's both Southern US thing. But I love trying different vegetable dishes and eating salads and seeing how many salads I can make without lettuce, because it's not always fun to eat lettuce. And I just love experimenting with fresh vegetables. And so my first 2 to 3 years in Southeast Asia, I was just sick a lot. I was at the doctor a lot. And no matter what sort of cleaning, healthy vegetable soak, organic, store-bought, one that was straight from the doctor's office or hospital, no matter what I tried over all of these years, I could not clean lettuce well enough to just not get sick. And so that was really where the intense part of the journey started for me, where I thought, if I ever figure any of this out, I want to help other people, because this has been very difficult. But yes, the food journey was difficult for me personally. Other expats, I guess their systems worked differently to mine. They weren't as bothered by that, but just adjusting something, healthy eating, or what my culture viewed as healthy eating, what I viewed as healthy eating for my unique body, I had to adjust a lot. I had to learn a lot. I had to research a lot. And yes, I finally just learned everyone's got an opinion, but I have to talk with my doctor, with other allied health professionals, and I have to do what I know works for me. So yes, it started with literally eating clean and not to get sick. Where I live now in Southeast Asia, I eat vegetables like crazy. I don't have to worry about it. So.
Right. And some of that is like, one of the things that I've learned is that like when you trace back from an ancestry standpoint, everybody's microbiome has bacteria that from like where your ancestors came from. And so different parts of the world can have different foods without reactions and that kind of stuff. So I know that's probably a piece of it, but another piece was understanding that like, okay, these vegetables in this country are just not the same. And so it almost like an elimination type of situation. It's like, I just can't have these here. Whereas if you came back to the US, I would assume you'd be able to have lettuce and it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yes. Wow. That's amazing. I feel like we're almost touching on not just a genetics conversation, but epigenetics conversation and triggers. And wow, that's deep stuff that I'm probably not qualified to talk about. I'm sorry.
No,
but I studied corporate and organizational communication. So that's far from epigenetics. I'm sure that you have done so much research. And so I appreciate, I actually enjoy your podcasts that dive into that. I listen to them regularly.
Awesome.
But yes, I grew up with Scotch-Irish background, and just something about my body, and apparently maybe my genetics just did not work with fresh vegetables, and it does not work with fresh vegetables in certain countries in the world. And in certain countries, I'm fine. So.
So when it comes to, Americans that are like, okay, whether it's I'm going to take a sabbatical somewhere or a mission trip, or, they're leaving for an extended period of time. Like, what are the things that if they know ahead of time for like a month or 2 months, what can they do to prepare for like okay, I'm going to be in this other country for a year, 2 years, 4 years, however long it is, like how can they start to prepare, not just like their body, because I'm sure there's only so much they can do as far as like trying to expose themselves to those foods, but like the mental side of this could be an issue. What do I need to know and how do I prepare for that?
Well, I would say the first thing is, and I feel like I'm taking a line out of the book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but don't panic because something probably will happen. Okay. I'm not saying you should be worried that you're going to have a serious wellness issue, but every time I've been doing this for 15 plus years as an expat, I've been to lots of countries all over Asia and in some other on some other continents of the world. And usually when I travel, even if it's back to my home country, especially now, I get sick in some sort of way. Most of the time, it is not dramatic.
Yeah.
Over the counter things help, rest helps. But my first piece of advice, and I hope this will be helpful, is don't panic because something probably will happen, but it's most likely not going to be serious. Yeah. Especially, and my second thing I would say is before you go on a trip, before you travel, even if it's for 1 week or 1 year, just make sure you spend some time talking to a health professional like your medical doctor or a registered dietitian that you trust, that you have a trustworthy relationship with, and just get their advice, get their perspective, talk to someone who has lived in that country more than 1 or 2 years because they just might be able to offer some practical things you think of. And that's still something I do. For example, I just haven't been to Europe, but if I ever visit, I want to talk to an expat who's been there a long time and a doctor who's lived there just so I can prepare in ways I may not have thought of. So I think being willing to learn, being humble and open to learning really helps. Yeah. Also, I would say, if you're going to be somewhere for just a very short time for 1 or 2 weeks, take whatever precautions you can that help you mentally relax, where I'm probably not going to get sick with these precautions because, that's a short time just for a couple of weeks. You want to enjoy your time there. For longer term, talk to people who live there, talk to medical professionals who know how to deal with these things before you leave your countries. Make sure you have the proper vaccinations up to date and just relax and enjoy the food with wisdom and just make sure you communicate. You're open and willing to learn. I've had just wonderful people who visit and they've had a good experience. Maybe they don't feel so well, but they're open and they're willing to listen and learn about some food and experiences to try. And then I've had friends visit that I know they're just going to do what they're going to do. And since they are good friends, it was my honor to go to the ER with them when they needed rehydration IVs because they tried some fish that had been sitting in the sun for a day. And trusted that God would protect them not to get sick or something. And, maybe he would, but I say, just don't eat it. So. Right.
Yeah, because there's still, even though it's like, there's still some just normal precautions of like, okay, wait, that just doesn't sound right to have that in that, like fish sitting out all day. It doesn't sound like the smartest decision to, even if it is a cultural thing, it's like you want to experience the culture, but within reason.
Yes. And, it's okay to have personal preferences. People say, oh, well, if you go and you just don't hit the nail on the head as a meal guest every single time, you're going to offend someone. Maybe, but in my 15 plus years of experience, no, you won't, because, a big secret, that's not a secret. People know you're a foreigner. They know it. You don't have to explain that a food is new for you. You don't have to explain, you don't understand, should I eat this or not? Because people are going to know. And my friends in South Asia and Southeast Asia and other countries, they understand if I'm just honest with them and say, I have allergies, or this upsets my stomach, or my doctor said this might not agree with me. So there's always a way to be respectful and inclusive without insulting a culture or another way of eating. Right. And, just listen to your intuition and your body. If something's not feeling right, you can find a respectful way to decline it. That's okay. Right. That's acceptable. Yeah. People understand.
That's good to know, because I know that's a big thing. If like you don't want to upset somebody in their home country and their traditions or their cultures, and and especially if we're traveling or we're there at a time where it's a big celebration time, and so there's traditional meals and things like that. So what you're doing as far as like helping expats adjust to a different style of health and wellness in a different culture, in a different world. Like you started that. So why is there a need for that? Like, is it that much different in some of these places that it's necessary, or is it almost like, because the US, I don't think anybody would argue that the US, we've gotten away from a truly healthy and wellness lifestyle. And so is it these other countries are still in that, and so it's a culture shock for us because we're not doing that?
Well, I think every country has their version of healthy, and then their version of treating oneself too much. I think that just happens everywhere. Right. In my experience, it does.
Yeah.
But I think it dives into areas that are even more, that go beyond even physical health and wellness, into mental health. There's so much amazing care for global workers, whether someone is coming in a professional capacity or a religious organization capacity. There is so much care for if something goes wrong, if someone needs help.
Yeah.
Often referred to as member care. There's a lot of that for mental health, for spiritual wellness, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations really take care of their people, and I appreciate that. But what I am hoping to help with, what I'm hoping to see an increase in, is preventative care for global workers, no matter their capacity when they go to work in another country. I just think that is a major life adjustment.
Yeah.
To have someone work in another country is a big ask of that family and that person, and your whole world just changes. It turns upside down. It's like having a 1,000 piece puzzle that is worked perfectly. You know how it's supposed to look, but then you put it in the box and you just shake it up and you dump it out, and everything, you have to sort everything again. You have to see, how does it fit together here? Because it doesn't fit the same. And honestly, when our minds and bodies are going through that stress, that period of adjustment for the first couple of years, especially, we all need someone to walk alongside us and just not tell us what to do, but be an encourager, a coach, a help to help you set and maintain and reach the health and fitness goals that work for you in your new context. And I just think that's a need for everyone. I mean, if that's a need when we move to a new state in our home countries, it's definitely going to be a need when we moved across the world somewhere, or to dive into a different culture, even within our home countries. Because that is the reality of the world now, that I think is beautiful, but we need help navigating that, right?
Yeah.
So I just think that for expats, they need someone who is willing to listen and to not judge, and to come alongside and walk as a friend, and to coach them in healthy living, and offer them the resources they need to succeed in their own health journey in a new context. And it's nice if someone who has been there, even in not the exact same way, can do that with you. And so I was happy to find people that tried to do this with me in my early years in South Asia. And so in a new way, in a more of a preventative way, not waiting until things are burning out or falling apart. Just how can people find ways to stay healthy, to stay well, to work toward what's important to them in health and wellness and nutrition and fitness and exercise and healthy sleep and stress resilience, all those healthy lifestyle pillars. We all need a friend to walk with us, and expats, they've turned their world upside down, and they need a friend to walk through that with them in a very personalized way. And so that's my passion.
Well, and I can imagine, it's like you said, you turn your world upside down, and it's something that for most people, and it's whether you're an American growing up in America or wherever your country is, if you leave your country after 15 or 20 or 30 years of only knowing that country, like, we forget what it's like to be the foreigner, to be the outsider, to be the, and so outside of just the physical and nutrition and that kind of, but the other mental stress and the companionship piece of it. I think that's, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and one of the things that they talked about from a longevity standpoint is when they look at people that are in their, 80s, 90s, hundreds, one of the really common themes is these people have community, whether they eat right or, do all the right things as far as like your body standpoint, but it's like, it's the community piece. It's a bigger driver of like, are you really going to live that long and have a full life from like when you're looking at more of a wellness piece. Mm-hmm. And so I imagine that's a huge piece of turning your life upside down is where am I going to find this, community and companionship?
As finding healthy community can be hard. And, you move to some countries and maybe you're one of the only foreigners, like in my first situation. And I moved to a community like I'm living in now in my second expat situation. And there are foreigners everywhere. So the challenge is finding community that fits me well and that encourages a healthy lifestyle in me. So, so what you're saying reminds me of blue zones. Excuse me a minute.
No, go ahead.
I was reading about blue zones, which I'm sure blue zones are communities around the world that have been decided that those are in that decade or in that 5 years, the healthiest communities where people have really good health outcomes, really good health markers, they're living longer. And a marker of those communities was just having good relationships, good fellowship, good encouragement, good accountability, just not being alone, having personal friends. And so that's really important. And I love reading about how one can encourage their own community to become more like these healthy blue zones that encourage health and longevity and wellness. And that's a good point. We all need community. We're just built that way. So
we are. And I think it in more than just obviously the mental side and the release and all that, but I think one of the things that the pandemic taught us is when we got separated so much physically, like we didn't share that energy together. We didn't share, which obviously we're Zooming, so we're not sharing that physical connection and that, but we're across the world. So it's the way it has to happen. But like, there's a difference in having a conversation with somebody, in the same room, and having that connection, which like I said, I know sometimes it can't always happen, but it's definitely, there's a physical piece of our bodies that has to share with other people.
Proximity and ministry of presence is just so meaningful.
Yeah. And I think that's a big reason for, like, from a mission field standpoint, why people need to go across the world, because you could send them pamphlets in their own language and you could send them stuff and for them to read, but it's a different atmosphere and outcome when you're face to face and you're able to share, that you care for them and that you're wanting them to have a healthy life and a well life and the love and joy and all of those things that come along with, caring for them. And am I right? And like, that's what you experience when you're out with the people in your community. Even though you're a foreigner, you're still able to have those experiences and connections.
I think you've given a very good description of what it means to need help as a human being, because I feel that way. If someone wants to share something with me, some sort of good news or help me in some way, I want them to know me. I want them to honor my personal interests. I want them to get to know my culture. I want them to know what are my needs. What is Chrissy like? And so, I'd like to honor other people in that way too. I want to be able to speak my friend's language, to know what's important to my community, to know what are matters of honor and respect, so that not only can I share helpful information, but that I can share the information in such a way so that it can be received and utilized well in this person's context. And so I think the personal aspect and getting to know someone and taking the time makes all the difference. At least it has for me, whether it's been a friend or a doctor or a trainer or anyone, counselors that I've spoken with.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, of course, I think the big one when you travel to another country that's not speaking the same language that you do, obviously, is that, there's an initial language barrier. And even no matter how much you may try to learn their language, like there's a cultural piece of their language that's going to be a barrier, right?
Always, because I will never be from that country.
Right. But food usually tends to sort of break those barriers a little bit, right? Because we all celebrate meals, we all sit down to eat. And so being able to have that meal together, is that what you experience when when you've gone to new places? Is it like, okay, there's these barriers, but when we sit down and have food together, like even though we may not know the exact words we're speaking to each other, like there's a community that happens over food?
Oh, very, very much. And thank you. That's a wonderful question. Just as someone who just recently completed another certification in nutrition and healthy living related to nutrition and how it affects the lifestyle. Food is such a connecting point. It's such a proud thing that people have, that people hold to in their cultures. This special food, this special recipe, this is Italian, or this is Nepalese, or this is Cuban food. Right. And it honors the culture to eat with someone, and especially in their home. And if you ever have the delight to be invited to someone's home, go and eat with them.
Right.
And yes, because I think as a parent, especially, I love cooking for my family and just to connect with other moms, with other women, and even other families. If we have like family on family time with friends, connecting over food is such an intimate act of friendship, of really inviting someone into your life, into something very personal, into your own home, your own living space, into your own way of enjoying food. You just can't do that with anyone. And so being invited in that way is very meaningful. And in our experience has just built amazing relationships. Some of our best memories over the two countries we've spent 15 years in is, they happened over food. They happened over trying new food, us laughing because our new friends think we're nuts for loving mashed potatoes, because that's disgusting. And why would you do that to a potato? Right. And we are asking, how can you handle this? Is too spicy. Please, we need help. We don't understand how can we eat this and enjoy it, because it hurts. And just loving each other through sharing such an intimate act as eating together. It really connects people, and many times for a lifetime.
Yeah. And like you mentioned about the blue zones, I think that's a big piece of what, from what I've seen about the blue zones, is that they do, whether it may not be every day, but they do have their connections happen over food, over big family meals, over big community meals. And it's not necessarily a celebration, it's just like, and I think that's something that we used to do a lot of in the US. And I think if you talk to people that are in our generation, we remember going over to grandma's house on Sunday afternoon, or, like we always did this because it was, the whether it was once a week or once a month, and it was the big meal, and we all that's just what we did. And lives get busy, and all of a sudden we don't do those things anymore. And I think that's a big piece of the wellness puzzle. And like you were talking about mental health, and is that something that you see in other countries? Is that there's still a huge generational connection within family groups?
In my experience in the countries I've lived in South Asia and Southeast Asia, oh yes, and it's a very beautiful, one of my favorite parts of the culture, how people's families are honored, and that doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that people dismiss or negate their own personalities. It means they're just so happy to find their identity, not just as an individual, but even greater as connected to their family and connected to a community and connected to a whole history. Yeah. And together, it propagates that in just one of the best ways. So just appreciating the local ingredients, just so much about eating together as a family, as a community. It just elevates the culture. It honors the culture. you pass down very important things in this time. And it doesn't have to be a big holiday meal. Sometimes it is,
Right.
but more often it's what happens regularly.
Yeah. And so is that it from a successful transition piece, is that then one of the biggest like pieces that when somebody's going over for a long period of time, is like one of the first things you've got to do is really try to get connected and involved in the community so that you're not alone. I mean, obviously you may have your family members or whatever, but like from that extended piece, because, when you're halfway across the world, you don't have, grandma's not right down the road, or, your best friend that you grew up with in high school is not, a couple hours away.
I would say getting connected in the community is very important, but something that I had to learn as a 20-year-old, something along that age, when I first went to live overseas, is I thought, okay, as a global worker, there is one ideal way to do this. There is a mold of how you fit into community. Maybe it's an American tendency. I'm not sure. Maybe it was just me and my lovely OCD personality. There's this box and I have got to fit into it because that is the right way to do it. There's only one way to do everything and all the other ways are wrong. I literally thank God that all these years later, what I usually tell people is, oh yes, get connected in the community, but as yourself. Don't try to be someone else. Your first couple of years, just know that you're going to make a lot of fumbles. It honors the people around you to take time to learn the language and learn the culture and apologize when you mess up. And you're going to make a lot of friends that way, but also just learn to connect with the community as yourself. My first week in my current country, where my family has lived for almost 6 years now, I love to work out. I love to eat healthy. So I was like, I want to meet people at the gym. So I want to know how that is. And in my last country, there really weren't a lot of gyms that were affordable, if any. And so it was just such a treat and a blessing to get to pick my gym. And so I picked a gym and I walked in my first day and everyone looked at me like, what in the world is happening? Who have walked into our gym? What is going on? Someone said, your hair is orange. And that was like the first thing anyone said to me. And I said, yes, it is. My name is Chrissy. But, I connected easier with people who had things in common with me. And, I think that's just a very human thing that happens. If I had never moved out of my hometown in South Central Kentucky, in Glasgow, Kentucky, I would probably still be connecting well with people who had things in common with me versus people who did not. And so I connect well with people here who I have things in common with, and my good friends that maybe they have kids my age, or our kids are in the same sports, or we love to work out, or we love this certain restaurant. Those are the people I've connected meaningfully with. Not to say I don't have other relationships, but those are the ones where, after taking time to learn about the culture and learn the language and honor people and just be a learner and learn how to be myself in this culture, which is, it takes a while. It just takes so much time. But yes, those common interests connected me to the community much better than in my first experience, where I just thought I had to fit a mold in how I connected with people. And my dearest friends here now are a couple who run a salad and steak restaurant, and they make chicken and other health foods. And we love creating different recipes that are easy, that are fast, that are healthy. And we connect well over that. And I have loads of friends from my gym who we love working out together. You work out, you make a mistake, you get tired, you give each other a hard time in a fun way to get back on track. And those are where my friends came from. And my daughter's connected with people who love the same sports or the same types of art. And my husband is a teacher here. So obviously he's going to connect with other teachers, but he's also an ultra runner. So he's a big part of the running community. He has made so many friends. He knows everyone in our community because of running. And so, be yourself and connect with people that way. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Right. Well, and I think that's a big, especially for somebody that's making, such a big transition, and it's not just I'm going on a longer vacation, but it's, okay, I'm changing my life, by moving to this country, whether, for whatever reason, work-wise, and like, to understand that, like you said, we've all been given gifts by God. Like this is who we're blessed to be. This is what the things that we love, that he's, given us the purpose and vision to help people in these ways. Like, don't forget that just because you're in a different country, right? Like you obviously have a passion for helping people with their health and their wellness and enjoying that atmosphere. It's like, don't ignore that just because you're in a different country. Don't think that you have to do things differently or try and fit into a puzzle piece situation. It's like, no, just go be you, just in a different place.
Yeah, that part of the most important parts of your personality are probably not going to change on an 18-hour plane ride, which was the first time I ever got on a plane. It was 18 hours to India and then a flight to somewhere else. And I didn't become another person on that plane ride. I think on that first initial plane ride, as when we were moving overseas, I was worried about how I was going to fit into the perfect global worker Christian mold or something impossible and insane like that. And then eventually just learned to relax and not take myself so seriously, and to trust that I'm made how I'm made for a reason. And that's the thing to celebrate. And that's the thing to pursue, and a good way to connect with other people.
Yeah. Now this may be a question I don't know if you may or may not be able to answer, but just based on your experience of like dealing with expats as they're in their different countries, is like, do you see the same struggles that people have that they have here in the US when it comes to like nutrition and like food cravings and things like that? Like, is that the same just because who we are, or do you see like when they get into a different culture, like, oh, that changes?
I don't think that changes.
Yeah, it doesn't change.
The heart of it is the same. That the front might look a little different, or what's on the outside might look a little different, but the heart of stress eating or depression because you're in a new situation and you don't want to exercise, like don't even want to go on a 10-minute walk, like or you just can't stand to go outside and be pointed at and called foreigner again. It looks different, but a lot of the struggles are the same. I still get questions, no matter someone's nationality or background or religion. The questions are usually the same. What's the best exercise? And people are often disappointed when I respond, the one that you will do and do consistently. The one you will stick to and do consistently. It's better to walk 45 minutes a day at a slow pace than to try and kill yourself once a week with some impossible workout. You're not, to measure health benefits and consistency. And basically it feels, I guess the work in some ways feels the same, but getting people to set consistent, healthy habits from a small way, and then growing into those habits in a bigger way over the years, which is the key, consistency and slow growth. Consistency, that's the key to greater health and wellness throughout our lives. I think the struggle is still, even though it looks different, is getting people to recognize the key is to set consistent, healthy habits instead of looking for something special or magic or a trick or never eating a carbohydrate again or something like that. Not even a banana, So
it's not, so if somebody is going to a country where they're like, oh, obesity is not an issue over here because, wherever that country ranks on, the World Health Organization obesity rates, like that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I'm automatically going to lose weight, like, because those struggles are still going to be there.
They are, because your genetic makeup isn't going to change because you went on a really long plane ride. I know foods that help me maintain a healthy weight, and I know foods that could be considered healthy that do not help me to maintain a healthy weight. And that really hasn't changed. I think the struggle is what foods are available in a country and finding what works for you. And then there's just the stress. Stress is a big deal. Overcoming the stress is a big deal to setting consistent, healthy habits, because unfortunately, in my new country, 6 years, my second country, when I'm stressed and it's just been a horrible day, there's a Dairy Queen, there's a McDonald's, there's a Burger King, there's a Pizza Hut.
Right.
And in my home country, I just didn't struggle with wanting those things as much. But here, it's just been a particularly bad day. I drive past those signs on the road and it just screams, this is from your home country. This is safe. This is comfortable. If you go eat all of this salt and sugar and fat and starches right now, you're going to feel so much better. Yeah. You're going to feel really horrible in the morning, but right now you're going to feel good.
Right.
And so those stressors are the same for expats. And even if an expat lives in a country without all those comfort home foods, you're going to find what stress eating means for you, or what unhealthy addictive behaviors look like for you in some other way. And so walking through those alone is hard. And, I hope I can help.
Yeah.
And help people not quit even after they make those mistakes, because in the first couple of years, you just are sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and like you said, it's the consistency piece, but it's not 100%. Like the consistency is not like trying to be perfect all the time. Consistency. It's just, like you said, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have those moments. And I know it's got to be, when you have those moments, particularly really hard ones, like when you're in a different country and seeing a Dairy Queen or a McDonald's, or that takes, the comfort food phrase to a whole nother level of like, I don't have to go to this restaurant where I can't read the menu because I don't know the language yet, to like, oh, I know what a Big Mac is, or I know what, these things are. And so it's like, that takes it to a whole nother, from a stress relief standpoint, a whole nother, level of what comfort food really, stands for.
Especially if you're pregnant. So which I'm not pregnant, but I have been pregnant in many countries. And those things are harder to resist when you're going through such a change in your body, and you're just burning all these calories because you're pregnant and just simply existing. And and it's right there, and it's so easy, and reminds you of home. So.
Right. But having making those mistakes, and that's where someone like you can come alongside, obviously, and say like, okay, it's not the end of the world, right? Like maybe you have or haven't made the exact same mistake, but you've made the mistakes, and you can be able to help them, like because I do this with my clients, just when it comes to an exercise or nutrition piece. It's just like, but having, like you said early on, like having that same connection experience of like, okay, I'm in a different country. I understand the struggles. I understand all these other things. In the grand scheme of things, like this mistake's probably really, really small. Like, right now it's huge, but in the grand scheme, it's probably really, really small. And let's just get past it. Because when you really look at like a longevity of a healthy, really full, wonderful, well life, like there's mistakes all over the place. Right? Like there's failures all over the place. It's how do you overcome those and continue on to build your community, to build your health, to build, God's purpose through your life.
Yeah. I think that's what you just said is so important, is how do you continue? Because you're going to make a mistake in some way, if not with food or exercise, then in some other way, you're going to make a mistake. And so the thing is, how do I give myself grace? How do I continue? And how do I give myself permission on Christmas or Easter to enjoy certain foods without going overboard? And I remember my first week in this particular country, I was just completely tired of being pointed at and saying, and here, your hair is orange, you have spots on your face, which I know that. Hearing obvious things about how I'm different when I already feel so different anyway does not help. And that's a small thing. It didn't destroy me, but it got so annoying. And I was going in the store to shop for like fish and artichokes and all this healthy stuff I was going to make for my family. And on the way, I saw a Dunkin' Donuts, and they had this under the sea themed donut with fondant fish, and it was filled with chocolate cream. And I thought, oh no, don't get it. And then not long after that, someone said, your hair is orange, you've got spots. And I bought a donut and I ate it because I was just so stressed. And I remember I just needed, you would think after many years of being an expat, you would think, okay, she's become an expert. Well, no, I'm still human. I still have stress. And
Sure.
I still, even though I've learned what works for me, I still face these moments in different ways. And I remember on Facebook Messenger, I contacted Susan Bell in Texas, who I attended her Zumba classes regularly because she was an amazing trainer and just so much fun. And she made me feel capable. And I needed that after the hardship of my first international experience. And I told her, I was like, I'm jet lagged, I'm sad, and I have eaten a donut just because I was like, I know it's not the end of the world. It's not my first donut, but I did it because I was sad and I just feel disgusted with myself. And I am not able to give myself the grace I would give someone else in this moment. So I just need help. And she said, tell me some healthy things. She's wonderful. She texted back, tell me some healthy things you did today. I said, well, I had a good jog, a good walk. I lifted some weights for about 20 minutes. I did have a healthy breakfast. And she was like, that's good. You did some wonderful things. And she said, exercise makes you feel good no matter what you've eaten. Yep. So happy that you've had that donut, that you've enjoyed that moment. And then tomorrow, you start again. You don't have to give up. And it doesn't mean you're never going to have a donut again, but it also doesn't mean that the world is going to end or that you have to stop being a healthy, disciplined person because you have eaten a donut when you're stressed. Right. And something small felt like a big deal in those initial expat moments here. And she just, it was on Facebook Messenger, but that moment of understanding and connection just changed my week because I wasn't doing well. Right. At that point.
Well, and I think that what you said is in the way that she handled that, I think is really important for people that are on the edge of like, oh, I might need a health coach or someone to come alongside me, or a dietitian or whoever it is like, but I'm scared because of what they're going to make me change or how they're going to make me do all these things. And the way she handled it, I love it because it's like, okay, well, you're going to have those moments. There's going to be those things. And all you have to do is like, okay, what else did I do? Like, and we do this in so many different aspects of our lives is where it's like, we focus so much on the one negative thing that happened during the day. And we don't focus on the, hundreds of positive things that happen. And it's like, that one negative thing just is a thorn in our side, and we're just like over and over and over, and we drill down on it and obsess about it. And that's the way it is with health. It's like, if you do that, then you're letting that stress overtake you, which leads you to an unhealthier lifestyle, right? Like it stresses your body to a point where it can get sick, and you have all these other issues where it's like, if we just go, okay, I did it, probably shouldn't have done it, like from a health standpoint, but I needed it from an emotional standpoint. And as long as we don't do that too often, we're going to be okay. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I think a good health coach like understands. That's why I was like laughing when you were like, I had to donut. And I'm like, yeah, it's like it everybody does it, and I've had multiple clients and it's funny because I go to networking events and people that just know me because they know that this is what I do and that, I'm a health guy. And so they'll be like, oh, I don't want to sit next to you for lunch because you're going to judge what I'm eating. Or I'm like, I don't care. Like, like you eat what you want to eat. If you want to be healthy, these are the ways you do it. If you want to splurge and enjoy, and because I don't know if this is the one meal you're having that's going to be, a more unhealthier meal or whatever. It's like, do whatever you want to do.
Just relax. I'm probably not judging you.
Right. And it's, and know that like, as long as you're making, like we had talked about, those consistent steps in the right direction, and it may not be food at first, it may be exercise at first, and then food comes along. It may be the mental health side of things that you've got to get under control first. As when you move to another country, I would assume like you've got so many different things going over, like take the things like you said before about exercise, like take the things you enjoy, that you like to do, that you're going to be able to do, and do those things first, and then try and bring the other things alongside.
Yes.
So how do so for those expats that are listening, because like I think I mentioned when we were dialoguing about coming on that, I've had downloads in multiple countries, and so there's a very good likelihood that there's going to be some expats that get to listen to this. How can they get in touch with you, follow you, get some information about like, okay, this is going to help me. Chrissy can help me through some of these challenges that I'm facing.
Well, you can find me on Facebook at Chrissy and then my maiden name, Kingry Winslow. And I can give that information to you as well if there's some visual way people can see it. Yeah. I have just started recently in the past month a health and wellness blog, well, for everyone, but hopefully uniquely tailored to the needs of expats, called Fine Fettled Foreigner. I grew up in the South, and so when someone would say, "How are you doing?" if you wanted to say you were feeling well, you would say, "Oh, fine and fettled." So,
nice.
Well, my blog probably has a little bit of my childhood culture in it. It's called Fine Fettled Foreigner. Probably Southern Kentucky, Scotch, Irish influence. So I write for expats there. Yeah. And so you can check that out. Also, I have an email address that's probably too complicated to try to explain out loud, that maybe we can share. So by email, commenting on my blog, through Facebook, you can find me in any of those ways. And I'm happy to talk with expats about anything nutrition and health and wellness and fitness related. If I don't know, I'll tell you, but I'll recommend some resources, and we can try to work through things together, find what helps you the most.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to have you on, is that connection piece of that person that's already been through something similar, and I think that's huge for people that are out there, because it is tough it's tough to live a healthy lifestyle. Like it's not necessarily in the culture that we have in America, at least, especially it's tough to live a healthy lifestyle because there's so much things that are coming at you. Not just food wise, but just so much of life. And that translates when you change countries. It's there's so many things that are still there. And like you said, the stress piece of it, whereas as more and more stuff is coming out about how much stress influences our overall health, that's a big piece of that transition. And if anything out there can be a tool to help people, I want to be able to help, get that out there for people that like, hey, here's help, as you're going along the way. And whether it's help just through reading the blog or through getting in touch with you in getting more, deeper into that connection. Either way, I'm happy to spread that for you.
Well, thank you, Jerry. That would be lovely. I would enjoy connecting with people, and I've certainly enjoyed talking with you, and appreciate your work and your passion for fitness and wellness so much. And so does my husband. Whenever he has an ultra run he's preparing for, and he has a running issue, and he always says, "Oh, I need to talk to Jerry. I wish Jerry were here." He absolutely loves having you in his life when he wants to talk about running and health.
Right. So no, and I'm glad to help him with those things. And he's doing great. And that is, like you said, that community. I've experienced the same type of thing here, of like getting in the running community, and all of a sudden everybody starts to know who you are, and everybody's an inspiration to everybody else in that community. And I know that happens in all different, like little niches of life, is that once you get in that community, you're going to inspire somebody, and somebody's going to inspire you. And I think that is a big piece of having a healthy, well life. And so, I think that's, if nothing else, people need to take out of this, that when you travel and you spend a lot of time in another country or that's what you're going to be doing, is to make those connections with people. So,
and don't be afraid to ask for help and to learn. That's part of it.
Yep.
We all need that.
Yep. So thank you so much, Chrissy, for being on.
Well, thank you for your time. Love talking to you.